President Trump has reportedly approved an agreement to provide Saudi Arabia with enrichment capability for a civilian nuclear program. He's expected to announce the deal later today. That agreement is expected to last 30 years. It would benefit US firms developing the program, and that potentially includes the building of a facility for enriching uranium within Saudi Arabia. What concerns some is that the agreement does not include the IAEA's additional protocol, which allows for more monitoring, inspections and verification, and it is notably weaker than the restrictions the UAE accepted some years ago for its own civilian nuclear program. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been commenting on this plan on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in the Philippines. Let's have a listen.
Well, I'm not going to opine directly on that agreement. We're going to put out, even when the moment is appropriate, we'll put out that in writing. We have to do it with Congress anyways, so we'll certainly do it publicly. But suffice it to say, the U.S. is not going to reach any agreement with any country in the world that leads to the risk of proliferation.
The Emiratis already have a nuclear power plant, Barakah, which is on the coastline of the Persian Gulf. In fact, it came under attack back in May. And remember, the backdrop to this is the US-Iran conflict that was all about denying Tehran an ability to enrich uranium beyond the levels that would normally be used for civilian purposes. We've been speaking to our security correspondent, Frank Gardner, on what it all means.
First of all, I think it's important to say it hasn't yet been approved by Congress. But there will be some concerns there, particularly of allies of Israel. Israel's obviously no friend of Iran's, and an enemy of Iran's is a friend of Israel to some extent. But nevertheless, regimes can change. There can be coups, there can be successions. So there will be some concern in both Israel and in Congress about this. What does it mean for proliferation? Well, countries around the region are going to be looking very carefully at exactly what the safeguards of this deal are. And as you say, it is slightly looser than the 2009 deal that the US has with the UAE to develop its nuclear civil program. Now, in the case of the Saudi-US uranium deal, there's going to be a 2-year joint study by both countries into the economic viability of domestic enrichment. Sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful. They're going to be looking at whether it is practical for Saudi Arabia to enrich uranium on its own soil within Saudi Arabia. This is called a black box deal, whereby the US would have quite a lot of control over how far this goes. And that, I think, will allay some concerns that it's not being farmed out to, say, China or to Russia, who've both got a lot of nuclear expertise. So the US is keeping Saudi Arabia within its strategic sphere of influence, as it were.
What is the standard protocol, Frank, in respect of the IAEA when it comes to international inspection?
Well, I think you'd have to ask them that. But as you rightly say, there is an additional protocol that isn't present in this, whereby quite intrusive inspections can take place. And this, of course, has been the big problem in Iran, that the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, that's the UN's nuclear watchdog, has not been able to get into Iran's facilities since just before the June war last year, in which Operation Midnight Hammer, the US launched those B-2 stealth bomber raids that knocked out a lot of Iran's nuclear program. But, you know, I spoke to Rafael Grossi, the head of the IAEA, earlier this year, and he said, look, we are ready and willing to go down there into those tunnels. We've got the equipment, we can do it safely. We're ready to go and find out exactly what the status of all that 441 kilos of highly enriched uranium is down there beneath the mountains of Isfahan and Natanz and Fordow. But that can't happen while there's a war raging between Iran and the US. And there is now concern that Iran has possibly other nuclear equipment buried even deeper beneath a mountain called Pickaxe Mountain, which the US is reportedly considering bombing, but may not even have the equipment to take it out because it's buried so deeply. So all of this, of course, points to, is the Middle East on the brink of some kind of nuclear arms race. I don't think we're at that stage yet. Turkey, Egypt, the UAE would all be interested, I think, in advancing their own nuclear programs if Saudi Arabia goes down this route. So the safeguards are going to be really important to look at. Just how safe is this program going to be?
Marco Rubio says there needs to be more detail around the plan that's being set out, and you rightly point out that it still has to be approved by Congress. But some would question, Frank, whether there would be any confidence that Congress can stop it, because, of course, the president on so many issues has the power of veto.
He does, and he has a very good relationship with Saudi Arabia. I remember going to his his inaugural presidential visit, overseas visit to Saudi Arabia in May 2017. I mean, the Saudis literally rolled out the red carpet for him. They then had the Biden presidency, which they didn't like at all. And now they've got Trump 2.0, and they like this president. They've got good relations. And you've got to remember that Saudi Arabia is very spooked by what's going on in the Middle East, with Iran's apparent ability to survive these massive airstrikes that first Israel and then the US jointly, and then now just the US, are conducting against them. And Iran has been able to exercise that strategic option of Hormuz. And now there is the Houthis' threat of closing the southern end of the Red Sea, which would really hurt Saudi's exports. So they will be looking as to what they can do to strengthen themselves strategically.
Frank Gardner there.